This week we are talking about my new book about the rise and fall of jazz. It's called It's All About the Notes You Don't Play Nice. Welcome to Triple Click, where we bring the games to you. Today we are talking about Blizzard, a company with all sorts of interesting history that I heard someone might have written a new book about. I'm Jason Schreier.
I'm Kirk Hamilton.
And I'm Maddy Myers.
Hello. We're back
Hello.
for another
Hello,
episode. And by now, everybody's had an opportunity, if you are a member of Maximum Fun, to listen to Triple Quest Act 1.
Yeah, to set out on our adventure with
To listen to us role playing.
Yes, which is very exciting. I think we'll do kind of like a behind the scenes thing a little bit later in the year where we talk a little bit more about the process and D&D in general. We'll definitely do something like that after we
Just
get
the
through
hours
a few.
we spent getting into character, just like
putting on our makeup.
method. Maddie was method the whole time.
I was,
She
I was.
insisted that we call her Key. It was we got used to it.
If you don't know what we're talking about, you should, of course, sign up and become a Maximum Fun member so you can get early access to Triple Quest, our 3-part D&D campaign, which we will be running in the bonus feed early for, like, we'll be doing every episode in the bonus feed, and it'll be exclusive to members for a month, and then it'll go live on the main feed. So if you're a member, you get the whole thing early, one episode at a time, and we're very excited about it. Our DM, Matthew Mercer, is just the best in the world. It's nice to do something with someone who's like one of the best people in the world at something. It's just pretty cool.
It is. He really elevated the whole thing.
It is, yeah. It's just really cool.
we're
Because
there.
we don't really know what we're doing, but he does.
Exactly. It's kind of like getting a podcast edited by Kirk Hamilton. You're like, oh man, this is
so
like
true.
just
Oh,
one of the
go
best
on,
in the
go
world. Anyway, go to MaximumFun.org/join, become a member. You also get access to all sorts of other bonus stuff, and you help us make the show possible. And just to reiterate, for this D&D thing, like literally, it is only possible because of Max Fun members, because we hired Matthew Mercer. He did not do this for free, so we used the money that we get in from all of you fine listeners, and we were able to do that to do really cool things, which we would love to keep doing, and they keep coming up with wild ideas in the future. So we are very thankful to all of you who support us. One more thing before we get to the episode is that we sent out those Bing pins to people who supported us during the Maximum Fun Drive, and for some of them there was like a technical issue where the glitter fell off of them. If you had an issue,
the red color,
the red stuff fell off. If you had an issue, send an email to membership@maximumfun.org, and they will send you a new pin because it was a factory issue and they printed more of them. So if yours has any issues at all, is it defective in any way, just send an email.
If it's haunted or any issues at all.
Yeah, if it's haunted, if there goes.
It has bad vibes. If it says bong.
If it is sus, as the kids might say, then just send an email to membership.
Yeah. Definitely send those emails if it has any issues at all.
All right, Kirk, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about a book. We're doing a triple read on a new book called Play Nice, The Rise, Fall, and Future of Blizzard Entertainment by Leon Goldpetal, an up-and-coming author that we're all big fans of.
I haven't read this one, so I'm not going to be able to talk about it too much.
That's fine. We can
spoil it for you. That's okay, right?
For you.
Yeah.
It's a pretty easy one to just summarize in a couple of sentences.
Yeah, I think so.
No, of course, I'm kidding. This is Jason's new book, which comes out next week on my birthday, on October 8th. It's a birthday present to me. Jason planned it that way.
I can't believe it. Wow, it comes out on your 60th birthday. That's so exciting.
Yeah, I know. It's a retirement gift for
Blizzard.
me.
You're the same age.
I'm very
as
excited
Blizzard.
to spend my retirement learning all about Blizzard Entertainment. This book is, of course, a exhaustive history of Blizzard Entertainment. I would not say it's exhausting. I actually think that it's a pretty
exhausting
energizing
for Jason,
and fun
I think,
read.
is what he meant.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, I see. Yes. Exhausted. Yes, Jason, you're probably exhausted. Well, and you've now gone on, I think, every video game podcast that exists to shill this book. So we're going to have to figure out what we're going to talk about.
Man. Okay. So here's the thing. You guys have an advantage because, like, when I go on other podcasts, it's kind of like when you go out to dinner with like your friends' parents and you just say like on your best behavior. Yeah, you have to kind of
Right,
answer
right.
their questions. You're on your best behavior, but
Yeah.
talking about it on Triple Click, it's like being at home having a family
Right, of
dinner.
course.
So
Yes.
You can
you
be
guys
real
get
with us.
right. You guys get the real.
Well, and I would actually think you don't really have to convince that many of our listeners to buy it, only because I would imagine a lot of them already have.
would
Hopefully.
hope.
And so I
have-
think,
have
I
bought
think
it.
we could do a little less just kind of me selling and a little more talking about some of the themes, which I think are like themes we talk about a lot on this show and are really interesting,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, I think so. So let me at least give my sort of quick synopsis or just sort of nutshell of the book for anyone.
You were one of the first people to read it. You read an early draft of it. And have you read
Yes.
the final version, like to see how they compare or parts of it?
I've skimmed through it and I reread the whole ending, which was very different. We can maybe talk about that in a little because I think that's sort of an interesting anecdote.
Yeah, because the version
that's
you got
fascinating.
had the initial ending.
because you had to change the
Okay,
ending.
Wow.
So, but we'll get into that. So, to give a kind of summary of it, even though I have talked about it on the show before, and of course, Jason, you've talked about it. It is the story of Blizzard Entertainment beginning in what, 1994, 93?
1991 is when the company started. Although the story begins earlier than that with Alan Adham's kind of and Mike Morhaim's personal history and like meeting a college and stuff like that. But the company started in 1991.
So it's very much like the origin story and then the just long saga of Blizzard Entertainment. It's many corporate owners, the arrival and departure of so many different people who influenced its culture and its games, its various successes, the challenges that came from those successes, its failures and the challenges that arose in the aftermath of those failures. It's a really ambitious book. I think it is fantastic. I've said as much on the show. I really, really loved it. I just think you should be very proud of it. I think it's well written and just really a fun read. I mean, I found it to be, as much as there are horrifying and challenging and, revealing, it is still like a really breezy read. And I really enjoyed reading it. And I think that listeners of the show are going to love it. Like, I think anybody who's interested in video games will like it. So it's a great book. Good job. Congratulations. And that's the end of the episode. No, just kidding.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Is this what it's
we have
like
a
on
lot
the
to
other
talk about here.
shows? Like they just talk about how great the book was. And
The other
I've definitely noticed when I've listened to you on a few other podcasts when you go on, and you're right that it's just fun to hear you guesting on other people's shows, just because
it's a different energy, right?
It is slightly different, and you're a guest in their house, and you're not quite the Jason that you are on our show, but you're still Jason, and I just enjoy hearing you and your cadences mixing with other people. But yeah, I mean, I think typically you'll go on a show and then someone will say, okay, so for me, the big theme was that Activision ruined everything or whatever. Like they'll throw out some huge generalization and then you'll have to say, well, no, it's actually really complicated. And it seems as though your job as the person who wrote the book is to constantly complicate the simplified binaries and narratives that people attempt to attach to this like incredibly complicated company that has had an incredibly complicated and multifaceted existence over the past, 30 years. So I almost don't want to ask you what the theme of the book is. I'd rather instead
Blizzard.
start with a quote. I think that there is a quote that Sean Carnes gives in this book, which is, when millions turn into billions, everything changes. He's talking about World of Warcraft and the moment when World of Warcraft became the phenomenon that it kind of still is and changed Blizzard forever. And I think that that's a good place to start, is basically the moment when your company achieves a level of success that's so far beyond the scope of your existence that you almost never recover from it. So I guess I'd love to hear a little bit about that and about that quote and just sort of what you think about that, having written the book and seen the whole story.
Yeah, so first of all, to your point about simplifying these complex narratives, there was an article by someone who read the book this week. I won't name the person who wrote it or anything like that because I don't want to throw them under a bus. But basically, it was just like, yeah, it was all Maddie. It was entirely Maddie, just total fuck up here. And it was just like, here are all the lessons you can learn about Blizzard's fucked up workplace culture. And I was just thinking, like, reading this article, I was just like, wow, did this guy read a different book? Because like there's so much more complexity and nuance, and so many people loved Blizzard's culture and different parts of it, and like this is just kind of a messy article simplifying like a complex story, and that's very frustrating. So yes, I appreciate you bringing that up, Kirk. I'll tell a quick anecdote that I have told on another podcast, but I think it's worth noting, which is that like, so you, Kirk, you were one of my quote unquote beta readers, which is I send it out early to a couple of people, just get a little feedback as I'm like editing and going through drafts of the book, and I sent it. A couple of people gave me this feedback of like, hey, your acts are in the wrong place. The fall is a little too early, because like the way it's structured is it's 3 acts: Rise, Fall, and Future. And Rise pretty much ends with like WoW coming out and the company just kind of starting to reckon with it becoming a cultural phenomenon. And some people who read the book, a couple of different people, were like, shouldn't the fall be much later? Like Blizzard had a lot of good years after WoW came out, including WoW peaking and like Wrath of the Lich King, which is widely considered to be the best WoW expansion. And I was like, no, this is exactly how it should be. Because yes, it's like the company's fall can be traced back to them releasing this game that was way too big, way bigger than they thought it would ever be, becomes one of the most lucrative things on the planet, and then turns into this like almost albatross for them, because once you make something like WoW, it's very hard to ever be the same again. You turn from a company, or in Blizzard's case, they turn from a company of hundreds of people to a company of thousands of people. They have this game that is so lucrative that it almost seems like a waste of time to be working on other things, because like, why would you work on something else when WoW is making you hundreds of millions of dollars? Like, why would you waste your time with this StarCraft Ghost thing or this Diablo 3 thing when you could be working on WoW? And it really transformed the company in so many ways, not to mention the cultural stuff, people getting fame and fortune and that getting to people's heads and that causing problems. Like, it's everything is summed up by that quote: when millions turn into billions, everything changes. That is the story of Blizzard, like in a nutshell. And I think that like even saying that is capturing how complex it is, because that quote cannot be like simplified or reduced into any sort of easy story. It's just kind of like saying that the complexities of success are both good and bad, and here is the story that kind of unravels that. And yeah, growth is such an interesting phenomenon. It almost feels like in capitalism, you're punished for making a mega hit like that, because you're expected to you're expected to grow from there, right? Like you hit a home run and you have to watch it grow. You have to keep going.
Right. And it defines you, right? It's the thing that's the first line of your obituary.
First line in your obituary. Yes, exactly. Yep.
You know, it's interesting also the fact that they had to shift to become kind of the World of Warcraft studio, even while I should say, many people at Blizzard didn't want to do that, because there were people at Blizzard who had expertise in making all different kinds of games. And while an MMO like World of Warcraft is one type of game, and they did a really good job of making one that was fun, as someone who personally didn't ever play World of Warcraft and has never found that part of Blizzard to be the most engaging part of the company to me, where by comparison, I really like Diablo, and I really like StarCraft, and I really like Warcraft, and I liked Overwatch for a long time. Like, I actually like a lot of their other games more than World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
It's interesting that a kind of side effect of the success of World of Warcraft is also that there's this conflict between art and commerce that is a broader conflict throughout the entire book. Like, the most obvious conflict in the book, right, is between Activision and Bobby Kotick and the creatives at Blizzard. And that is the kind of dichotomy that so many people are familiar with and is kind of always oversimplified, but at the same time was a really relevant conflict throughout the period of Activision's ownership and like Kotick's stewardship of Blizzard, or of the broader corporate structure. At the same time, like even just looking within Blizzard, you kind of can see the same thing. Like what you said, that argument that you kind of put forth of, well, why would we make anything other than this game that was really successful? Like, why? The answer to that is, well, there are a lot of different answers to that, but one answer to that is like, because I don't want to make an MMO. Like, I don't want to just do this.
I want to do StarCraft again. Like that's something that really struck me about it, was the people that want to do something different, or just wanted to make the real-time strategy games that they had started off with, or any number of other projects, and then just got pulled into the vortex.
Yeah, Blizzard in the 90s was very much a place of like, hey, we want to make these games that we love playing and like do our own spins on them. Hey, this game Dude Tool is cool. Let's make our own version of that. Hey,
there was a lot of let's take it, which is a cool recurring theme. Like, let's take this idea of this game we liked and let's make it better.
And let's make it better, which, right? Like, and make it more approachable
so
and make it more polished. Yeah. And And that ethos was still around after World of Warcraft, but it was so much different because World of Warcraft became vortex is a good word. It was a magnet. It just sucked in everybody because the reality was that World of Warcraft, from its get-go, they all kind of knew oh man, this is going to have to be a game that lasts forever. Usually it's you put out a game and then you move on to the next thing. And that had been Blizzard's 13-year history before that. Was they release something, they do patches and updates for sure, and all those games like Diablo 2 got patches for years after it came out. All these games got updates, but they weren't having dev teams, full dev teams on them making new stuff for them, other than an expansion for each of the games. But with World of Warcraft, it was kind of oh, we not only have to do an expansion, we also have to be releasing new content every few months. We have to be doing new expansions after that. We have to be thinking of this game as something that'll last. I mean, we're approaching the 20-year anniversary and it's still going strong right now. It turns 20 in November of this year. So that alone, I mean, we talk about games as a service a lot these days, but that was one of the first examples of a game as a service just absorbing everybody into the machine and really just taking everybody. And then the reason it became, or one of the reasons it became a big conflict and a big pressure point with Activision was that Activision wanted all of the most talented people in the WoW machine to get WoW expansions out more quickly, because that's what Blizzard had always also wanted to do and pitched and tried very hard to release WoW expansions on a quicker cadence. They were released pretty much every 2 years, and Blizzard really wanted to get them out once a year. Because it leads to more growth and makes players happy. Players want it. Players want a ton of content in that game. And the pressure from Bobby was hey, why aren't you guys bringing in more people to do this? Why are you wasting your time with these other projects? This Hearthstone thing, this Heroes of the Storm thing, the StarCraft thing. Why aren't those people just working on World of Warcraft? Or why aren't you hiring hundreds more people to work on World of Warcraft? And that was the way Bobby saw things. Was just this is a product, this is a machine, this is a factory like Call of Duty. It should be you should be finding the formula for releasing it. In fact, his kind of lieutenant, Thomas Tipple, would talk about the man-month formula and literally be well, with our man-month formula, it takes thousands of people, and here's how many people you should have for this. They saw it. Bobby liked to hire consumer products goods people, from Procter & Gamble and Nestle and stuff, which is all people who just see games as soap and detergent, and it's just another product to be shipping. And that was a big conflict because it led to all sorts of issues. I mean, for one, Bobby would be thrilled when Blizzard came out with a hit like Overwatch, but he didn't seem to understand that to make a hit like that, you can't have everybody on World of Warcraft. You need to give people the time to innovate and incubate. And then the reason it's complex is because on the flip side of that, Blizzard really took advantage of that philosophy, that when it's ready philosophy, and spent a lot of time incubating and innovating and working on things that never came to fruition or just floundered for a long time.
Yeah, that was a really fascinating part of the book. And I'm kind of curious about how you dealt with just collating so many different people's experiences, because just as a reader, it was really cool to see multiple perspectives about projects that ended up going way better than expected or projects that went absolutely nowhere and how frustrating that could be. And I just thought it was cool to see how often you were balancing those perspectives. But I know as a reporter, you were probably well, which person do I want to lean on the most? There is no true... Or, well, we can't really know what's actually true. What's the platonic ideal of the truth of what really happened? But you'll have Jeff Kaplan's version of what happened and what led to him quitting the Overwatch team is very different than Bobby Kotick's, but probably every single person who worked on Overwatch and just the lead up to Overwatch 2, Bobby Kotick wanting to put way more people on it, wanting to make it a Call of Duty that came out constantly. There were people in that story who did want that and were I kind of wish that we did have more people on this team. I just thought that it was fascinating how often you had to balance those different employee perspectives in the book.
Yeah, I think Overwatch is a great example. I mean, that seemed like what you were talking about at first, and then you started using examples from it, because I do think that example it's a perfect crystallization of everything you're talking about, partly because it arose from a failure.
Yes,
so it starts with the failure of Titan, and then they find the success, not by accident, but in this kind of organic way.
Right.
And then it leads to this sort of misunderstanding of how it was made, coupled with as sort of bullish desire to keep control over the team that made this sort of miracle happen, that caused Overwatch to rise from the ashes of Titan in the first place. And so that's kind of the conflict between Kaplan and his small kind of core group and Kotick. And then the fact that like Overwatch 2 as a result totally suffers, Overwatch 1 eventually suffers, the whole thing kind of falls apart. It's not really clear like that in retrospect, like Kotick was right. Like they should have massively bulked up the staff and whatever. It's not right. It definitely resists that simplistic analysis, but it definitely captures that kind of broader theme that happens over and over and over again throughout the book.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that something I heard from quite a few people was this notion that like even when a good idea came from someone like Bobby or like the Activision side of things, there would be resistance to it because it came from them, which is so...
Well, it's heartbreaking. The worst person just made a great point, right?
Yeah, and who among us cannot relate to that? But in this case, I think that Jeff Kaplan, for very good reasons, had like a strong belief that a team size should be small. And by small, I mean, by the time he left, I think it was close to 200 people. It wasn't like tiny, but it wasn't Call of Duty size. Call of Duty at that point was in the hundreds, maybe even more than 1,000 at that point. Certainly now it's more than 1,000 people working on Call of Duty. And so I think that like he had very good reasons for that. One was that he had been through Titan having too many people on it at different points and like wanting to avoid repeating those mistakes. And same with World of Warcraft. Like I think that on the World of Warcraft team, even though they blew up quite a bit, they still were not able to achieve their desired goal of like releasing an expansion every year. And I think it led to some problems for certain people, or at least not everybody wants to work on a team like that. Like a team with 500 people means you have to have an army of producers like managing everybody and communicating, and it just can make things really less efficient.
It's a totally different creative process, right? I mean, that's an interesting lesson of this book is we see the results of teams of such vastly different sizes and get a sense of the inner workings of those teams. And it's just like, you're almost talking about a completely different kind of like creative work, making something like certainly Call of Duty or something like what World of Warcraft is now versus making Hearthstone and like Ben Brode's story of making Hearthstone, which is almost just like an indie band forming within, Google or something and then just like putting out a great album.
Like a little hackathon.
Just such a different thing.
Yeah. And then the flip side of that is that I spoke to people who were on the Overwatch 2 team who were like, I mean, it was a little silly that like this one guy was responsible for this, and this, and it was a little it was out of control. And then a lot of people, I think there was certainly skepticism about Jeff Kaplan's vision. It's interesting. Jeff Kaplan is a really interesting kind of figure because he's very charismatic and people like really believe in him as a leader and would like...
He's a great spokesman to the public as
fantastic
well.
To the
his
public.
Overwatch videos were a big part of why people give him so much,
100%.
They really give him a lot of credit for the game and trust him.
And also internally, like people would run through walls for him. Like he was very nice guy, charismatic. And I think that like people internally, even if they were a little skeptical of his vision of like infinitely replayable PvE and what that might look like, I think they really wanted to make it work. But a lot of different factors contributed to it never really working. And I think that Blizzard people might blame Activision, and Activision people might blame Blizzard. And I won't say the truth lies somewhere in the middle. I think the truth is all the above. I think there are just problems on both sides. And I think anyone who I've seen a lot of sentiment that is like Activision bad, Blizzard good. And I think every single person who reads this book in its entirety will come away thinking, oh, that's not the case. Like Blizzard had plenty of self-inflicted problems, both culturally and business-wise. But yeah, the Overwatch story is fascinating because it has all these like complexities.
Yeah, it has it all.
And the other thing, here's another thing, is that one of the reasons they needed to expand is because they had to manage simultaneously updating Overwatch 1 and like doing heroes and maps and modes for that and microtransactions, making Overwatch 2, which Jeff had this ambitious vision for, and doing Overwatch League, which just kept growing.
Wild.
And the pressure, that
Overwatch League,
the amount of work that fell upon the Overwatch 2 team, or the Overwatch team in general, Team 4 in general, as a result of that, was pretty hefty. Like, they had to be doing a lot of stuff, and they wanted to, because like Jeff Kaplan and his circle, they wanted to own the brand. And here's another kind of divide where Activision and Blizzard are just completely philosophically different companies. At Activision, the commercial organization owns the Call of Duty brand. Like, the developers and the games are not making decisions about like how Call of Duty is marketed, and like whether Dwight Howard is in a Call of Duty commercial or whatever, like which celebrities are in the latest Call of Duty commercials. Like, that is handled by the marketing org. The marketing and the commercial organization supervises everything. They have the most power. They are the central team. They control the budgets and everything. They have power. Whereas at Blizzard, all of the power belonged to the developers, and the marketing was kind of under that, and all of the marketing decisions, I mean, like, the Overwatch team could have control over that, to the point they even had supervision over like the Overwatch Legos and like consumer goods stuff. Like, they wanted to be in control of the entire brand. They saw it as their baby. They wanted it to be perfect. They didn't want anyone else to take control of it. Again, for better or for worse. And so that plays into why they felt the need to do all this stuff. And they also didn't want to grow super huge, because they thought it would ruin their culture and make it even slower to get stuff done, because like it would be months of training and they'd all develop this chemistry with each other. Yet they had so much work, some of which was kind of given to them by Bobby and his team, because Overwatch League blew up so much that it was just unsustainable. And even when the Overwatch team grew and grew and grew, it still couldn't handle doing PvE and PvP, to the point where now it's just a PvP game. Like, they've given up on all those PvE visions, which again makes sense. I mean, Destiny 2 as a team of like, at least when it was like at its peak, it had a team of 800, 900 people working on just that game. Like, it's a substantial amount. And so it would have been impossible, I think, for Overwatch to hit its vision with a team of less than 200 people. But you can also see why they wouldn't want to expand, because they don't want to ruin their culture. They don't want to, like, it also creates all these hiccups for them. So I think the takeaway here is that game development is impossible and nobody should ever try to do it.
Yeah, I think, to put a bow on the Overwatch thing, I think that them recovering from the trauma, or whatever you want to call it, the disappointment of Titan's failure, like the hangover from that failure just seemed as though it was a unique wrinkle to that situation that just caused a lot of trouble down the road, because it was so understandably difficult for them to let go of the idea of this PvE like thing. Or we were going to make the next World of Warcraft. We were going to make something so cool. We had this idea. And like, even if they were never even close to really pulling it off, you can understand why they would want to keep coming back and like to want to have that redemption. The same as any other video game redemption story. Like CD Projekt Red being like, we can't let Cyberpunk go.
Totally.
We have to come back and make it into the thing that we had the vision for. They were able to do that. Not everyone's able to do that. And clearly Kaplan and his team weren't, for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, it really speaks to how many moments there are in the book. Not that I'm saying this is a theme. There are no themes. Read the book. There are so many moments.
There are a lot of themes.
They're just not kind of simplistic.
There are so many moments in the book where somebody very charismatic is like a character for a while, and like the entire gravitational pull of Blizzard changes to kind of revolve around them, or some pocket of it changes to revolve around them. And that isn't always someone who's a great manager or even has a truly great idea per se. I mean, I'm not going to cast aspersions. Again, making a game is impossible. I could never do it myself. But like in reading the book, you kind of see how many stories Jason heard of someone who was simply so good at convincing other people to do something that magic would just happen around them. I mean, like, to give like a complimentary example, I feel like that's a lot of what Ben Brode's story is. I also think Hearthstone's a really fun game. I have a great time playing it. So like that's kind of like an example where you understand like, okay, yeah, and he was also really charismatic, so naturally people were drawn to him, and that helped the project and helped him be the public face of the game. But there's so many other examples of people at Blizzard, mostly guys, who just like people would just flock to them and be like, this must be a great idea because I like this person, or I think I do. And like it was just fascinating to me how that push and pull just kept happening. And I'm sure that's true of other major companies too, but it's very cool to read how much access you got here and how many anecdotes you had to just describe what that feels like at a massive company on a massive scale.
And I get the sense that a big part of why it was so pronounced at Blizzard was because the company had been around for so long, had started so small, and had grown so large.
Yep.
In that way, it's actually pretty unusual for a company to start as small as Blizzard was and to grow to become this world-dominating, Activision Blizzard that then gets bought in the largest corporate acquisition of all time for whatever it was, $70 billion or something. And like that growth caused a lot of really interesting, unfortunate, sometimes just sort of neutral effects culturally within the company, right? Like that's just such a big part of it, is that these people who all guys who were in charge at the beginning just had to grow into levels of responsibility and creative roles and, management roles that like they never would have anticipated when they started, in their defense. And also they just were, some of them just very not prepared for or suited to. And then that led to a lot of negative outcomes. And then, people following them around being like, oh, this guy is the leader. He must know what he's doing. He seems great because he was here 10 years ago when we had 20 employees.
Well, that's the thing, right? The tenure gives you the status at Blizzard, and that can cause problems too. Yeah, it's funny. I interviewed Mike Morhaime a few weeks ago, the co-founder and former CEO of Blizzard, about Dreamhaven. He's like doing the rounds, talking about his new company. And I'm actually talking to him live on stage at a Bloomberg event next week in LA, which should be fun.
Oh, nice.
And he told me, quote, "We had no idea what we were doing." And it shows. I mean, they didn't have HR for years. That's what 90s gaming industry was like. And Blizzard, when you trace Blizzard's path, a lot of it, so in some ways it looks like other gaming companies. id Software comes to mind as like a 90s, another 90s kind of rock band mentality. But then it explodes and turns into an empire in a way that like id Software never did, that other companies at the time never did. Nobody else became a company of thousands of people. And that is wild, other than like the big publishers, but those didn't even start as like little garage band type game studios. And then you had all sorts of good and pros and cons that came with that. I mean, when you're tracing, I guess the kind of the rise and fall of Blizzard is really this company that like grew too big, and then remained successful for a while, but you could just feel that those pressures were going to get to it. And then it all it culminated with Titan, I would say. And if you're really pointing to the point where like the downhill, I mean, I describe the fall as like when World of Warcraft came out, but the Blizzard's kind of negative turnaround, I would say, really more realistically started with Titan, or the bad things started to happen after Titan was canceled, because Titan was set up as this the next big thing for Blizzard, the next WoW, this is going to be our big lucrative next project. And when that fell apart, it gave Bobby Kotick the kind of excuse he needed to come in and be like, hey, like, we need to get some adults in the room.
Right.
I was just talking to the Defector guys about how similar it was to our situation at a former company. Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah. And so then after like all of this, after Activision starts coming in, it isn't the only problem, but then all these problems start to happen. Sure, they have hits here and there, but they also start feeling financial pressures. They have this new CFO come in, and he brings all sorts of like finance people to the table who start changing the culture of the company. And then Mike Morhaime leaves, and then it's just a string of disasters. It's just like Diablo Immortal and Blitzchung and Warcraft 3 Reforged, and then the California lawsuit, and it's just hit after hit for Blizzard. Hit in the bad way. It's debacle after debacle for Blizzard. And that really, it brings us to where we are now, where maybe the company can turn around, but like people always ask, can it recreate the old magic? And I'm always like, no, because the old magic that people remember, and them just becoming this like Pixar of video games that comes up with hit after hit, that was before World of Warcraft. Like World of Warcraft was so successful, it prevented them from doing that again, and they were able to capture lightning in a bottle with Hearthstone and Overwatch. But like, that's more the exception than the rule in the post-WoW world. And even now, you look at their big games, they're all service games. Like that's what Blizzard has become, is a service game company because of WoW.
Yeah, that also exists in the service of Xbox's bottom line, which is also going to be a very different, like that'll be a very different setup. Just
whole other story. Yes.
And it'll Xbox just completely change everything about what it means for Blizzard to be Blizzard. Rewinding quite a bit, I actually found the story of Blizzard North and the creation of Diablo to be very interesting, because it kind of exists outside of this narrative, which makes sense because it involves essentially a totally different studio that was acquired by Blizzard. But that whole story plays out before World of Warcraft comes out, and in kind of the midst of several of the early ownership transfers of the company, where Blizzard, acquires this other company. What are they called? They're called Condor. And it's a whole other group of creative people who are also very good at what they do. Mm-hmm. I mean, they made Diablo and Diablo 2, but they work very differently. And I think that section of the book, it's a good example, I think, to speak about the book a little bit more, of how the book manages to show a lot of different angles on Blizzard, because it really does exist outside of this broader narrative. You can really just picture okay, Blizzard was founded, they made a bunch of good games, they got bought by someone else, then the ownership transferred, eventually they were owned by Activision, they made World of Warcraft, they got big, et cetera, et cetera. We've kind of laid that timeline out. Diablo, which is considered, at least by me, as one of the primary Blizzard brands, was made by this totally other group of people in a different studio that was brought in under the umbrella of Blizzard way, way back in the 90s, before most of this stuff happened. And then there was a whole series of conflicts and creative struggles between these two teams that worked very differently, that eventually led to a mass management exodus at Blizzard North, which kind of makes me think of Defector 2, of a group of people being you know what? F this, we're out of here. And they all leaving kind of all their employees being oh shit. And
yeah, that's
eventually
the part
pretty quickly no, in that way, right. There wasn't quite as much solidarity, but it's sort of similar story of,
well, they didn't mean to leave. It was an unintentional.
That's true.
Right. That's right. They were all, they were all
the
fired. Where they basically tried to play hardball. Is that right?
They
were bluffing.
Bluffed. Yeah.
Yes. And their bluff was called. Yes.
Yep.
Right. Which is pretty tough, especially given that they did make two smash hit games.
Yeah.
But anyways, I just thought that story was really interesting. I'm curious if you have any additional thoughts on it.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating. It's in some ways a microcosm of the Blizzard story, and it's in some ways its own just kind of narrative entirely. And yeah, the parallels are interesting. The culture clash stuff is interesting. I don't know. There's a lot of details in there that people should just read the book to find out about. But yeah, in short, I mean, the Blizzard North just had its own kind of rise and fall that, unlike Blizzard, because they never had their own version of WoW, they collapsed at the end of it and were ultimately absorbed into Blizzard because of WoW.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And because they couldn't totally own the success of Diablo 2 because they were already owned by another company. They kind of didn't have the ability to say, well, we made Diablo 2, let's keep going and make Diablo 3, which in a different world where that studio was just independent and just had made, imagining that they had made Diablo and Diablo 2, which obviously I'm sure Blizzard in some ways contributed to them making that game.
Well, they were pretty independent. No, so what happened was after Diablo 2, they just were so burnt out that they didn't do anything for 2 years. They split into two groups. One of them started working on what they called Project X, which was a billion different things. Another group started working on Diablo 3, but it was so early, and they had two different engine teams, two teams of engineers making two different engines at the same time, which was insane.
This is where Starblow was happening.
Starblow was the final
outer space Diablo.
That was the final version of the Project X thing, and it was just a mess. I mean, one of the reasons that Bluff didn't work is because Blizzard North was such a chaotic, toxic atmosphere at the time that Blizzard was all right, you guys need to be put in shape here anyway, so it's okay if the founders leave and we just are no, it's time to focus on Diablo 3 instead. So no, I think they had a lot of independence at that point. It's just that they didn't use it well.
It just kind of fell apart. I think that chapter will be helpful for some people. It was helpful for me in just really internalizing that there was a whole different studio that made Diablo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that the Blizzard North is not just sort of a different offshoot of Blizzard, that it was a whole other company with a whole other culture that just happened to have Blizzard in the name, which has happened in game development from time to time. And it's a good reminder that 2K Marin versus 2K Boston or whatever, it's the same thing where you're no, these are just totally different cultures, totally different studios. They're just owned by the same corporation, so they have the same branding slapped on them. Can I throw out... Here's my hot take from this conversation. So you say that the fall started with World of Warcraft. Could I throw out the theory that the fall started 2 years after Blizzard started, when they were first acquired by Davidson and Associates?
Yes.
And that the fall began there, and it's really all fall, baby.
Wow.
Okay, so something else, when I spoke to Morheim about Dreamhaven a couple of weeks ago, something I told him was hey, you've had Dreamhaven for 4 years now. That means you've now owned Dreamhaven for longer than you ever owned Blizzard.
Yep.
Wow.
He was like, oh my God, I've never thought about that.
Really? I'm so surprised he hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, how is he not counting down the days?
I feel like if I could look back at a 30-year legacy of a company that I had only owned for 2 years and had sold and had seen so many negative outcomes from being owned and shuffled around from owner to owner, all I would be thinking about is how I can maintain my independence of my next company for the entire lifespan of that company. That's really interesting that he hadn't thought about
that. Might not be their takeaway, though. Who knows?
I don't know, but then you look back and it's like, would they have survived if they didn't have a parent owner? Like, I don't even know the answer.
Sure. It's an interesting counterfactual.
Because the point where they sold, like Alan Adham and Mike Morhaime, the founders, they were like putting debt on credit cards, like maxing out credit cards.
It's right. Certainly, I certainly don't mean to suggest that they made some huge mistake.
Right.
More that just the inevitability of it, or like they did what they had to do, but that was the moment. I mean, it's totally wild that they basically never owned the company.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that almost never happens. That initial acquisition was such a bit of happenstance. And those first few owners are so random. They're just random corporate companies. I think about Halt and Catch Fire, or some of these like sort of fictionalized accounts of that era of the 80s and 90s in computing, and how there were just these kind of random companies just out there being like, yeah, I don't know, you make motherboards, I guess we'll just buy you. And then next thing you know, like that parent company becomes Intel or whatever, and like becomes a like monster thing. The way that Vivendi eventually became and merged with Activision and became this massive entertainment conglomerate, when it started out as like a French water company, right? Like,
Vivendi, it's the Vivendi Games that kind of spun out. But yeah, it's really it's quite wild, and people don't realize that. A lot of people think like, oh, Blizzard should have never sold to Activision, without realizing that like, oh no, Blizzard sold in 1994.
It was like
baby.
4 owners before that this happened, or 3 owners.
Blizzard. Well, I think an interesting bit of alternate history is that like Blizzard, I think if they didn't sell to Davidson, they might have wound up merging at some point, or being absorbed into Interplay at some point, which was their earliest partner. Brian Fargo and Alan Adham were kind of childhood friends, and if that had happened, maybe Interplay would still be around today. Maybe they would look very different. I have no idea. It's a fun little bit of alternate history there. But yes, it's like, I mean, the fact, a little juicy nugget in this book is that they were briefly owned by a company called Sendent that like was investigated by the SEC for massive accounting fraud. So many fun details. We have to wrap up soon, but I want to ask you a question before we do. And I know did you want to talk about the book writing process? Well, maybe
can I hear about what the alternate ending was?
Let's talk about that a little bit.
I want to know.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Let me tell you, because I read it, and I can tell this story. It was very funny. I had read it, and a mutual friend of ours had also read it, and we were all kind of talking about it a little bit, giving Jason some feedback. And the final chapter was pretty positive. And my feedback was like, this final chapter like just doesn't quite feel right.
Well, talk about the timing here. This is like December or January of this year, right? Early January of this year.
Yes, of this year, early January. So post-acquisition, going through massive rounds of layoffs. So basically, we're looking at it being like, I don't know about this. Because it kind of ended with a little bit of ambiguity, because, you know, it just wasn't clear what was going to happen. And there was plenty of cause for pessimism, but at the same time, like, how are you going to end it, right? So Jason was kind of ending the book on a note of like, hey, maybe things are going to get better. Who knows? Like, you know, it's been a rough ride, but here we are. We got bought by someone new. I don't know. And it was just a little bit of a like, the ending didn't quite match with the book, which is, I think, typical of early drafts in general. And so we're kind of talking this through and giving that feedback. And then there's this just like massive development, this really unfortunate development, but also one that now, of course, looking back on it, just feels inevitable, that totally like it makes so much sense with the overall story of Blizzard. And I got to watch as Jason was like, oh, I can now work this into the book, and I can completely rework the ending of this book, because now there is like a major event that happened post Xbox acquisition that gives us a sense of what it really means for this company to have been bought by Xbox, and like totally lines up in a, again, very unfortunate way, but with the story of Blizzard this whole time. Like, this one more acquisition, one more corporate owner, and one more set of unfortunate circumstances. So I'm curious how that was for you, just going through that in real time.
Well, for me, I don't want to spoil the ending because I really like the way it narratively comes full circle. But for me, it wasn't like, obviously the layoffs, I felt like I had to get that in there, and I'm glad I did, because it would have felt so totally off if like it ended with this note of optimism without being able to include that. I think I would have delayed the book if I had to, which fortunately I did not have to. But the thing that was, I think, narratively most satisfying for me was ending it with Alan Adham and coming completely full circle. That to me was a special moment, and I'll leave it to readers to to learn how it properly ends. But that to me was a really good place to end this particular story, because it starts with Alan Adham and it ends with Alan Adham.
Yeah.
That I remember. I think I talked about this on the show, seeing a headline that was basically Mike Ybarra departs Blizzard. It was like Alan Adham also left. It was the article, and I was like, wait a minute, you got that backwards.
Yeah,
like,
people
that guy
don't realize.
started the company.
Yeah.
No one even knows who he is now.
This is something that I know this book will do, especially for people who are into Blizzard games, is just kind of put a lot more weight on him as the guy who essentially started Blizzard. Like, it was his notion to start the company.
His force of will. Like,
his
really,
force of
it was
will,
his leadership. He was a huge part of defining what it was.
Yeah, those early games, StarCraft and Warcraft especially, were him. So let me ask you guys a question. What book should I write next?
Oh my
I need
God.
to figure this out. What should I write about?
Figure it out.
What story should I tell?
It's tough because the only other company that comes to mind is Nintendo. And I know that would just be very difficult for reasons you've said many times, the language barrier, the cultural barrier, just the fact that it all took place in another country. But like, it's hard to think of other companies that are quite like Blizzard.
It doesn't have to be a company. It could be a story that is like just another interesting story. Or maybe
only companies. I'm only interested in companies.
No, I have a suggestion, Jason. I know this is your
Maddie's
dream.
got one.
It should be something fictional. And it could still be in the world of games, perhaps. And I know how much you like a well-told tale, a mystery, a thriller. And this book has a lot of that. So I feel like you have a lot of stories that you've heard from people that could build into something.
Time for the fiction pivot.
I don't know.
I love it. No, I love the idea. And Tomorrow is the perfect
comp. It's a great book.
For like a video game.
Like, what if Tomorrow and Tomorrow was a murder mystery?
Honestly, that actually sounds really cool. That sounds like it bangs.
Man.
It slaps. I think you should do that.
Maddie, it's funny you say that, because that's what every bone in my body is telling me I should do next is fiction after like 3 nonfiction.
You should listen to those bones, baby.
Yeah, do it.
But also part of me feels like there are probably stories that still should be told that are interesting.
And you'll find one when you're not looking, I'm sure, that's true. As those things go.
There'll always be stories. You gotta at some point rely on the little journalists that you're inspiring, who are hopefully following in your footsteps, to tell some of those stories. We can't rely on Jason to tell all of them.
And then you pivot to being a best-selling novelist.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Hopefully the journalists I'm inspiring are able to actually make a living instead of having to pivot to PR because they can't actually find a career in journalism.
Hopefully.
So
hopefully.
We'll see.
Not
you
to
can write
end
a book
this on
about
bleak
that.
note, but yeah, right.
Well, for now, everybody go and pre-order Play Nice, Jason's book. You still have a little bit of time to pre-order it because it isn't out for a few days. Or just go buy it at at your local bookseller.
Yeah, I'm also coming out if you're in New York. I'm coming, although actually we have this event in Brooklyn, but I think it's like already sold out. So sorry if you don't already have a ticket. But I'm doing a talk at Book Soup in Los Angeles pretty soon on October 11th, and then I'm going to be at Book Passage in San Francisco. And so a couple fun little things if you want to come see me and say hi. And
then you're coming to Powell's in Portland. We're so excited.
Stop it! You got everybody's hopes up for a second. Sorry,
no.
I wish I could. I could.
No, I hope those events go really well and that people go and check it out. That you get some triple click listeners.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I'm talking
Checking
to
out
our
the
old boss
book
Stephen at the Lofty Pigeon Bookstore
a good
in Brooklyn.
interviewer. So there you go.
He is a good interviewer. He'll ask you some questions. He always comes up with a few questions you're not ready for.
Yeah, right. He'll definitely. Yeah, he'll ask me something I haven't been asked on the 40 podcasts I've been on, which will be fun.
He probably will. Actually,
that is his talent.
Yeah. One more thing is that I think next week I am going to put, for people who are curious, a clip from like a chapter from the audiobook in the Triple Click feed, so people can get only Triple Click listeners can get like a sample of the book, of the audiobook especially, which is read by Ray Chase, and it is awesome. So I think people will really like his narration of it. And yeah, thanks guys. This is I appreciate the support, and I hope people really like it. I hope it resonates with people.
It is a great book, and yeah, I think people will really enjoy it. I certainly did. All right, let's take a break, and then we will come back for one more thing.
Hi, I'm Alexis.
And I'm Ella.
And we're the hosts of Comfort Creatures.
We could spend the next 28 seconds telling you why you should listen, but instead, here's what our listeners have said about our show, because really, they do know best. The show is filled with stories and poems and science and friendship and laughter and tears sometimes, but tears that are from your heart being so filled up with love.
A cozy show about enthusiasm for animals of all kinds, real and unreal. If you greet the dog before the person walking them, or wander around the party looking for the host's cat, this podcast is for you.
So come for the comfort and stay for Alexis's wild story about waking up to her cat giving birth on top of her. So if that sounds like your cup of tea
or coffee, Ella, we're not all Brits,
then join us
every Thursday at MaximumFun.org.
Hey, this is Mike Cabalon,
Ify Wadiway,
and Sierra Kato,
the hosts of TV Chef Fantasy League,
where we are currently using fantasy sports rules to watch Great British Bake Off,
or the Great British Baking Show as it's known here in America.
We've drafted the bakers onto our teams, and now those bakers are earning us points based on how they're doing on the show.
And at the end of the season, one of us will win the prestigious TV Chef Fantasy League trophy crown. What is the...
Yeah, I don't know. I keep forgetting to order something. Probably just dinner. Anyway, subscribe to TV Chef Fantasy League and play along with us at home.
Or just listen in as we cry over our bakers' soggy bottoms.
On MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back for one more thing. Oh, we have a nice little trilogy of topics here. Maddie, why don't you go first?
Sure. So my one more thing is a tool I've been using that I'm a huge fan of, and I just want to share
Love this
it
kind of one more thing.
just in case other people are having the same problem that I am. So right now, I've been playing a game on my Xbox. Can't talk about it. It's under embargo. Place your bets, listeners. What could it be? And I am enjoying playing it also on my Steam Deck. How am I pulling that off? Well, probably couldn't have done it a few weeks ago. Have never been able to get the Xbox Series S, the baby Xbox as I call it, to do remote play particularly well. I'm not sure why. It doesn't work very well for me.
It's too much of a baby.
It's too much of a baby. It's a tiny baby and it can't do it. I don't have a Series X, so I don't know if that's the issue. I don't know if it's something wrong with just Xbox's on base itself. I don't know. I don't care. I don't have to troubleshoot anymore because after some Googling around, I discovered that there is an app on Steam that costs $7 and it just works. It's called XBPlay. You can just put it on your Steam Deck and you can just play games from your Xbox. And I know we talk about it a lot on here. We're talking about PS5 Remote Play. I'm constantly using PS5 Remote Play on my Steam Deck. That was a pain to set up. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, where setting up PS5 Remote Play is a 10, XBPlay is like maybe a 2. And only because it costs $7. It's like, again, I said it once, I'll say it again, it just works. Folks, we simply love to install an app that works perfectly and it doesn't have any problems. It's great. Right. I'm having no issues and I'm loving my life. And now maybe I'll actually play more games on Game Pass. Like, am I going to start using my Xbox more? It could happen. I don't know. So XBPlay, it's spelled like capital XBP and then lowercase LAY. It's on Steam.
Is this just a third party that has made this?
I don't know who made it. Just some developer out there was like, hey, Xbox is bad at this. I'm going to make an app and I'm going to sell it for $7 and it's going to work way better. Not sure of the circumstances of this app, but hey, I appreciate it. There's a subreddit for XBPlay. There's like a group of people who are really into this app.
This is like if Chiaki, the PlayStation remote app, like if that were just on Steam.
Precisely.
And you could, if I could pay $7 for that to just have it be installed.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I totally would. Like, that'd be worth $7 to me anyways.
This is like that.
I set it up, but it was a pain. But that's very cool. I didn't know that was possible. So that
Me
is
either.
I don't have an Xbox or really use one, but I could imagine.
Yeah, but I'm sure some listeners do, and I'm sure listeners are going through it, and maybe they were willing to pay $7 to have something that simply works.
For sure.
Yeah. So there you go.
XBPlay. All right, cool. Well, I'll go next. I've been playing a game that I just wanted to talk about a little bit because I really like it. It's reminded me how much I liked the original. That is Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster, aka DRDR, which is what Capcom is calling it. This is a second remaster of Dead Rising, which originally came out in what, like 2008, 2009?
Something
I remember
like
it was one
that.
of those like first Xbox 360
2006.
exclusives. So 2006. Yeah,
Yes,
that sounds right. 'Cause
That
it
sounds
was
right.
right
And it was-
after
it was-
the Xbox 360 came out.
Yeah. And I played this game. This was very shortly after I got it back into video games in 2007. I bought an Xbox 360. I've told the story many times. But I got an Xbox 360. I got a copy of Oblivion, The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, and a copy of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. And I was like,
Perfect
I'm good on
purchase.
video games
No
for the
notes.
next year. And I just played like whatever, 200 hours of those games. And I was like, wow, video games are pretty cool. And then it was 2007. So like the Orange Box came out.
Oh my
and
God.
Then GTA 4 came out a little after that, and whatever, like Far Cry 2, and all these just amazing games. It was a great time to get into gaming. But among those games, I also played 2006's Dead Rising, which I loved. I played the hell out of it. I played it all the way through multiple times. And what I find remarkable about this game is that there's never really been another one like it. It is a unique game. And now it has been remastered and redone in the RE engine, the Resident Evil engine, so it looks a whole lot better. They've changed a lot. They've changed some things that like aesthetically are a little weird, but they've also they've removed some of the like really rank sexism from the game, like the
Yeah.
fact that you can get bonus points for like taking upskirts of female
Yeah,
characters,
it's-
photos of
it's gone.
So
No more
anyways,
achievements
there are
for
things
that.
that are changed. No, thank goodness. And still, there are some aspects of the game that are actually, in some ways, sort of enjoyably seedy. Like it does feel like 2006 games in some ways, like just in the way the female characters are portrayed and stuff, where I'm like, ugh, this is like not my thing. But in some way, it almost doesn't make me nostalgic. But I'm just like, man, remember 2006? Like, it does not grievously offend me or anything. And the game itself is really fun and really cool. So I've been really enjoying playing through it again. To explain what it is, so this is a game where you play a guy named Frank West, who is a photojournalist, and it is a kind of a photojournalism game. I'd kind of forgotten how much the first one is about taking pictures. You get dropped off in a mall that is basically
Pokemon Snap, except with zombies.
yeah, there's a mall that is like the mall from Dawn of the Dead. Like it's like we're in the middle of a sort of contained zombie outbreak in this small town. Frank West goes in because he's an independent journalist and he wants to find out what's going on and get the scoop. Gets dropped in onto this mall, and then the rest of the game is him in the mall with a group of survivors trying to survive an onslaught of zombies. And the big technological breakthrough for the game in 2006 was that the Xbox 360 could render dozens and dozens of zombies in this fairly open mall, so you're kind of like running through, hallways that are just jammed with zombies, and you're kind of crowd surfing over them, or sometimes you get in a vehicle and you're like plowing through just dozens of zombies. And at the time, that felt pretty groundbreaking. It's actually still pretty fun, though of course we've had a lot of games like that since. But there have been sequels to this game. I think I maybe reviewed Dead Rising 3. I think that was a launch title for the Xbox One, and each one has just moved further and further away from the conceit of the beginning of the first game in the series, which was that there's a time limit. So there's always a kind of clock running, and you have 72 hours to do what you can and then get to the helicopter exfiltration and like get out. And there's a true ending that's very, very difficult to get. And the idea of the game that's kind of not signposted to you is that you're supposed to kind of fail a few times, because each time you restart, you start with all of your level ups and upgrades and like cool things you've unlocked and shortcuts and like all kinds of things that make the game way, way faster the next time through. But you do start it over. So it's almost like Rogue inspired a little bit. Like it isn't at all, and I would never call it a roguelike or a roguelite, but it has a little bit of that replayability and like returning with like a more powered up character. You're almost doing a new game plus, but it's built into the game. And that time constraint and just the kind of the like tactical and logistical limitations that you're under the whole game are just really cool. Getting back into playing it, I'm remembering pulling up the map and being like, okay, right, crap, I have to get to this wing of the mall, but the only way through is like to go across this big courtyard, but there's this stupid truck with these guys on it, this Jeep that these guys are on in the courtyard, so I'm gonna have to sneak around them, and you're constantly having to kind of keep moving because the zombies are slow, but they're always kind of a threat. And then throughout the game, you're always grabbing new things. You're in a mall, so there's like an endless amount of weapons and improvised weaponry you can grab: sledgehammers, baseball bats, anything from a sporting goods store, weights, but then also furniture, and eventually like funny hats and all kinds of things. You like put funny hats on the zombies, and then or you take a golf club and you're hitting them with balls, or of course there are all kinds of guns, and like there's a billion different ways that you can kill zombies, and it's a very arcadey game in that way. And then of course you're also playing a Pokemon Snap game where you're trying to take pictures of, you know, unique little things on the walls, or as many zombies as you can get into a shot, or pictures of brutality, and it's kind of scoring each picture and giving you XP based on how you're doing. All of these things, the time limits, the logistical limits, the photo mini game, the weird looping structure of it, the weird tone that's kind of seedy and off-putting in some ways. It just doesn't feel like any other game. And playing it, I'm reminded of just how cool this game is and how kind of singular it is. And I'm really digging it. I really I overall really enjoy the experience of playing it. So I just wanted to mention it on the show because it's reminded me how much I liked that game and how, I don't know, I kind of wish there were more games that were just totally different in this way. It's just a reminder that like, oh yeah, in 2006, someone at Capcom like just took a flyer and made a very weird game that still kind of holds up.
That turned into a franchise with 2 sequels.
Yeah, that turned into a franchise that really just diluted what made the original game great. I don't know. We'll see. I'll be curious if it's successful, or if that means they're going to make another one, or maybe remaster the old ones. I don't know.
Personally, I think instead of removing the upskirts, they should have just added a male version where you have to like take a photo of someone's balls.
Easier said than done. You know,
it's a great idea, Jason.
I feel like it's just somehow the gender swap doesn't work quite as well.
Jason's full of very serious ideas over here. All right. So, Jason, what is your one more thing?
My one more thing is the Afterparty season 2, which you watched a year ago, Kirk, and I have finally gotten around to watching.
I still haven't, and I saw this and I was like, oh yeah, the Afterparty season 2.
Right, it's a good reminder that that was a thing, and it was good. And I remember seeing like kind of like weak reviews, and then they canceled after this. They canceled it after this. But I remember you enjoyed it for the most part, at least.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I liked it more than initially I was a little slow on it. I thought it was a little slow. And then as it got going, I quite enjoyed it. Yeah,
I thought it was awesome. I thought it was really good. And I'm even sadder now after finishing it that they canceled it, because I would have totally watched like more seasons of this show. Yeah. It's such a cool conceit. So for people who aren't familiar, the show is it's a murder mystery told from a bunch of different perspectives, kind of Rashomon style, where you're recreating the same event, an after party. In the first season, it's like after party of what was it, like his show or something? It's some like singer who has an after party and he's murdered. And then the second season, it's a wedding after party, or it's a wedding and it's after party, and the groom is murdered, and they're trying to figure out who did it and why. And
with many of the same characters returning.
Yes, and then the gimmick is that no, it's just the protagonists who are returning, like the 3 protagonists return.
Okay,
but the gimmick is that like each person, their kind of version of the story is told in a different movie genre, which is a very fun way to play around with the storytelling. Like there's one that's like a noir, and there's another one that's like a Dirty Dancing style.
There's a Wes Anderson.
There's a Wes Anderson
like an epic kind of like global adventure.
The global adventure one is the Dirty Dancing one, which I did not expect it to be.
Oh, right. It's like a torrid romance.
Yeah. I expected it to be like Indiana Jones, but then it was like a romantic thing. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so it's really cool. And
melodrama.
But the point is that like all of these, it's like exploring different genres, and it's very fun, and it's a very fun way to tell the story, and it's a very good mystery. I was surprised by how it ended. And
I think that's why I wound up liking it, is that I think the mystery was the reveal. Like it was actually pretty cool. I was like, oh, nice. All right.
It's not only is it surprising, I was completely caught off guard. It's one of those that it's like, oh, this makes perfect sense. It's not like out of nowhere.
Twist.
Like
I'm gonna watch
totally
this.
Earned. You'll really enjoy it, I think, Maddie. I think everyone should watch this show.
So
it's just such a shame that they've ended it, because both of these seasons, I guess they were too good to keep going, but I really enjoyed them.
Well, it feels like Apple is realizing that they're not making much money off of streaming, and they're starting to cancel some things. And I could see that show being pretty expensive considering how it gets made. I mean, like that John Cho sweeping international melodrama episode, I was like, this is probably pretty expensive. Like,
I mean, it's Apple, and most of it takes place at the same house, so it can't. It's they do save on location budgets, but yeah, it's a big cast, so I'm sure that's expensive. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Afterparty season 2 on Apple TV Plus, not to be confused with Kirk's one more thing from last week, Apple TV.
With the Apple TV. Or TVOS, really cool. Which is their operating system.
Yeah, right. I've also been catching up on Mythic Quest, like while I still have this Apple TV Plus subscription. And I'll talk about that more in the future, I'm sure, like in a few weeks.
You know what you should watch is Slow Horses. That's the best show on Apple TV.
Remind me what that is real quick.
I think I've made... It's like a spy show with Gary Oldman. It's based on some books that I've been reading. I'll actually make that my one more thing again because I've been reading the books and they're great.
But we're not gonna... back, but it's let's just start. No, repeating
I remember
them.
It now.
No, I should. I was. What I would make my one more thing now. What I'm saying is, I started reading the books, which are the show is very closely based on, and the books are fantastic as well. But maybe I already said my piece, and I don't have to make it my one more thing. Maybe now, we'll see. We're all just cheating here at the end.
I mean, I don't think you did. For what it's worth, I don't think you did. I don't think you talked about the books yet, so you still can.
No, I haven't. I'm just saying I just did, and so now I basically got a second more thing. Anyways, Apple has some good stuff, Jason. I'm glad you're getting to watch it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, that is it for this week's episode.
It sure is. Everybody go and buy Play Nice, the Rise, Fall, and Future of Blizzard Entertainment.
Or get it from the library. I'm okay with that too.
Or get it from the library. Support your local library. That's also cool. And we will see all of you in a week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Triple Click is produced by Jason Schreier, Maddie Myers, and me, Kirk Hamilton. I edit and mix the show and also wrote our theme music. Our show art is by Tom DJ. Some of the games and products we talked about on this episode may have been sent to us for free for review consideration. You can find a link to our ethics policy in the show notes. Triple Click is a proud member of the Maximum Fun Podcast Network, and if you like our show, we hope you'll consider supporting us by becoming a member at MaximumFun.org/join. Find us on Twitter at TripleClickPod, send email to tripleclick@MaximumFun.org, and find a link to our Discord in the show notes. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Maximum Fun, a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows,
supported
directly by you.